Oh, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your time as a student, if you have like a particular memory.
I'm ancient, I know, but it was before we got 2 buildings, right? And we called it the bowling alley. It was one long corridor of a linoleum floor, and at the very end, there was the quote-unquote typing room, but it was also the smoking lounge.
Oh my
Which
God.
goes to show, like, okay, we had the brown lounge where you could type and you could smoke, so...
Oh my God, this is like giving me
I know.
like visions of like the Mad
So
Men
this
secretary
beautiful,
pool.
fancy log grounds we had was
my gosh.
not in the day what
The
we
bowling alley.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've come a long way from a structural standpoint. This is Admissible. I'm Natalie Blazer, Dean of Admissions at UVA Law. I'm excited about today's show because I think it's a particularly uplifting topic, one that's close to my heart. We're talking about the ways in which our students at UVA Law are making a positive impact on the world before they've even graduated from law school. Specifically, we're talking about the Pro Bono Program at UVA and how it empowers our students to put their developing legal brains and skills to use in ways that immediately benefit communities in need right here in Charlottesville and around the world. Joining me to discuss the law school's Pro Bono program is Kimberly Emery. Kimberly has been the law school's assistant dean for Pro Bono since 2004. Formerly, she was the assistant dean for public service and founder and director of the Mortimer Kaplan Public Service Center. Kimberly coordinates pro bono programming for law students, advises students and graduates regarding pro bono opportunities, develops and fundraises for new service projects, and oversees the law school's Pro Bono Challenge and volunteer recognition events and awards. Kimberly received her BA magna cum laude from Carleton College and her law degree from UVA, where she was elected to the Order of the Coif. Prior to returning to UVA in 1992 to develop its public service programming, Kimberly worked as a staff attorney at the Charlottesville law firm of Mitchie, Hamlet, Lowry, Rasmussen, and Tweel. I don't know if I said that right. Kimberly was a board member for the Legal Aid Justice Center for over 15 years and was a founding board member of Piedmont CASA right here in Charlottesville. Welcome to the show, Kimberly.
Thank you, Natalie. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you. So a little icebreaker before we get started. For someone who has called Charlottesville home for as long as you have.
35-ish years now.
Amazing. Do you have a favorite spot?
I would have to say one of my very favorites, and I know it's yours too because I see you there, is the Divide.
Yes. I was
Friday
hoping you would
night
say
haunt.
that. Yes. We love running into you and your husband there. It's great to be on like
a community of its own.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The community of its own. Awesome. Well, I provided a somewhat condensed version of your very impressive biography and background at the top of the show. I think it would be great to set the stage for our conversation to know what motivated you to go to law school in the first place, and then what led you to center your career around pro bono and public service.
Well, I guess initially I could say scared of blood. No.
No
Which
med
shocks
school
me
for
that my
you?
daughter is now a pediatric resident.
Wow.
No, so I was obviously not going to med school. But I was always interested in government policy and had kind of a passion since very early on for volunteering, working particularly with low-income folks, both in high school and then again in college. So I did take the LSAT my senior year of college, but I knew I was going to take some time off. Mm-hmm. So I was sort of looking at where should I go? And I just ended up in D.C. working for a nonprofit called Common Cause, which you may have heard of, does a lot of campaign finance reform and open government work. And so I actually came to UVA Law at the time very committed to public service, but more thinking I wanted to be a lobbyist and go back and do that kind of work in D.C. But then when I got to law school, I got very involved in work with victims of domestic violence and clients of, well, it was then the Charlottesville Albemarle Legal Aid Society. It's now known as the Legal Aid Justice Center. And I kind of switched gears and got very interested in sort of the public interest legal world. So,
Got it.
and then I guess, as you know, my idea of going back to D.C. did not materialize. I ended up in a job search condensed into Charlottesville because I had met my now husband, who was tenured here as a professor, not at the law school, over in the psych department in arts and sciences. And so I briefly worked with Mickey Hamlet doing family law work, but I knew that wasn't really my passion to be in private practice. In fact, I was one of only, I think, 2 in my entire class that never even submitted a resume to career services. So we're the minority in the boom 90s that didn't do any kind of private sector recruiting. But I had been really, really involved in public service work while at the law school as a student. And we had a new dean come in, Dean Robert Scott, in 92, right after I graduated in May of 91. And he was very interested in bolstering the public service program at that time. So I just got very, very lucky because was able to come right back to law school and found a home there for now I'm the ancient one, you know?
No, you're not. But you've been here. I mean, when I realized you started in 2004, or as the assistant dean, rather, that was right before I got here.
Right.
But
I've been founded the Public Service Center in 1992.
Wow. Well, before we get into sort of the specifics of our pro bono program, I think it would be helpful for listeners who might not know, I think people know, but to explain what pro bono work is exactly and why we place such a strong emphasis on this kind of work.
So, as you may know, pro bono comes from the Latin pro bono publica, meaning for the public good. It's a term that's used specifically in the context of volunteer legal services, where attorneys or law students provide legal services to indigent clients or underrepresented causes or groups for no fee. And I think it's very, very important in the context of our world of law because we are founded on a principle of equal justice and access to justice. And obviously, unfortunately, we haven't met that ideal.
Yeah.
And we have a really huge access to justice gap. And some of that is valiantly tried to be filled by the Legal Services Corporation funded programs on the civil side, public defenders on the criminal side. But we, as practicing attorneys, need to fit in the middle there with pro bono to help fill that gap.
Absolutely. You know, one thing I always tell our applicants, admitted students, is like whether you go into the private sector or not, you are a servant of the public good. And I think that's exactly where this fits into that.
Yeah, and I think that was sort of one of my motivations when I founded the Pro Bono Program back in 1999 was the idea that we all have this professional responsibility, and it's not actually solely for those practicing in the public sector.
Yeah.
They're sort of doing that work as part of their professional lives anyways. But those who are off in the private sector who actually have a lot of resources potentially behind them, we need them desperately.
Right.
And so the goal is sort of to inculcate that, as you say, in all of our students.
Right, right. And the American Bar Association, speaking of inculcating, has actually codified the responsibility of members of the legal profession. People probably know American Bar Association, the ABA, is the volunteer association that lawyers belong to. But they have a rule that states every lawyer has a professional responsibility to provide legal services to those unable to pay. A lawyer should aspire to render at least 50 hours of pro bono legal services per year. So until I was researching for this episode, I don't even know if I knew that the ABA really comes right out and says that.
We are glad that the ABA does, but you should, as a lawyer, see that little word in there that says should,
right.
Not must.
Right.
So while this is a great model rule promulgated by the ABA, and we certainly cite it, and it does indicate a clear commitment to our professional responsibility to provide pro bono service, it is not mandatory. And so part of our goal in trying to reach law students is to increase the number of attorneys who actually do give at least 50 hours a year under that aspirational should standard.
Yeah. Very good legal clarification of terms there. So, of course, the main incentive, I guess, or reason to perform pro bono work is to help others, to serve those who are in need. But can you also talk about, starting as early as your 1L year as a law student, what are sort of the benefits to the student who's training to become a lawyer when it comes to performing pro bono?
Well, that's what I love about pro bono, because I think everybody's first thing is, the altruistic, like we need to help those who can't afford to pay for legal services, which is certainly definitely true. But I always like the idea of doing well by doing good. And so while you're doing good and you're providing these really needed legal services, you as a law student have so many, and even as an early associate, you have such a a great opportunity to develop your legal skills. For those of you who are coming straight through, maybe, into UVA Law community, enhance your resume. For your potential job search, because you may not have a lot of legal work or even kind of work in an office setting on that resume, and this gives you an opportunity. It also gives you a great opportunity to try out a potential area of legal interest. Say you're thinking, oh, maybe I'd like to be a public defender. I mean, I came into law school thinking, oh, maybe I'd want to be a prosecutor. And then I quickly realized after moot court, no, not standing up in front of people. But you only have 2 summers. And as we know, those are going to be very valuable summers. And so an immersion with pro bono gives you an opportunity to try something out. And, of course, you build mentors. You're going to be supervised by an attorney. And so that person not only supervises and trains you, but also could potentially be a reference. You're going to build that professional network. So there are so many benefits to doing pro bono. And also, let me just say, if anybody ever goes to our web pages, we love them. We put a lot of effort into them. But you'll see testimonials from students on there talking about some of the benefits like this in terms of legal skill development, resume enhancement, but also just the deep personal satisfaction that comes from doing this kind of work.
Yes, the rewarding work that you might not always find with your billable clients, right?
But I cannot speak to that.
Right. But that keeps you tied to your work as an attorney. I think that's such a great point. And I'm really glad you mentioned our website because, yes, first of all, it's full of great information, but the student testimonials and the articles that have been written about our students' pro bono work, I think, are really helpful to understand the just wide range of things that you can do from a pro bono standpoint. So let's talk about, how the pro bono program is sort of structured. So kind of from a student perspective, my understanding is they can start like as early as first semester, 1L year.
Absolutely. I mean, people say, well, I have no skills. But, you're in law school now. You're starting to learn. And we're lucky. We have a lot of repeat supervisors who have worked over the years with us and are very clued into what level of skill a first semester student is at. A lot of those projects are going to be pretty basic research, intake services, that sort of thing, or working with some of our, and we probably talk about this later, but our student organization pro bono projects, which are a little bit of a nice entree for those who are just entering the world of law school and legal practice.
I'm glad you brought up supervisors because pro bono is legal work. And you're a student. you are not the one who is actually, the attorney of record.
Oh, please. No, you're not.
You haven't even taken, your courses yet. You certainly haven't passed the bar. You certainly haven't been admitted to practice in a state bar. Right. So you need a supervisor who is a licensed attorney who is going to oversee your work. Now, similar to a clinic or an externship, like you are doing the substantive work. That's where all this real world practice comes from. But talk about the role of the supervisor. Who are they? How do they get involved?
Yeah. So, initially, as I said, we were trying to reach out to local practitioners here in Charlottesville at local firms. And that has its difficulties simply because most of our practitioners here are in small firms. And sort of the time commitment and the logistics of mentoring students on the type of cases that they have is pretty difficult. We have some of those because we now have a wonderful pro bono coordinator for the local bar who's at the Legal Aid Justice Center who sort of makes some of those relationships with us.
Okay.
But really what I've tried to do over the years is move on from that group. And so every pro bono project that we post, meaning on our Good Work system for law students to apply for, has an attorney supervisor. Occasionally, it's a law school faculty member. Some of our clinical faculty in particular do some supervising, but most of the time it's outside attorneys from various organizations or state, local, federal government agencies. And so I just am always in the role of trying to recruit those. That's the most difficult part of my job. I have lots and lots of willing students because we are very blessed at UVA with very public service-minded students who want to do good. And I have, obviously, in the world, tons of clients who need help, more than we could ever help. But because our students are not licensed, they need to be supervised by somebody who is. And so I'm always trying to fill that role.
Yeah.
The biggest thing we do is try to make everything flow through good work so that we're sure that any student doing pro bono work is supervised.
So I was going to ask if our faculty are involved. And like, of all the pro bono projects, what percentage do you think are supervised by our faculty? Are you?
I'm so bad at math. Yeah. But fairly small.
Very small, okay.
So we have, for example, our street law program is a student-run organization that goes out and does know your rights and legal education lessons to high school students. Mm-hmm. And the supervisor for that is one of our faculty members, Josh Bowers.
Got it. Okay.
So that's an example. We also, as I said, clinical supervisors often have work either above and beyond what their clinical students who are in the clinic for credit can do, and some of that overflows into pro bono.
I see.
Or particularly that kind of work over the breaks when their regular clinical students are not available.
But really, it's more of the practitioners.
Yes,
local,
out in the world.
Yeah, got it. Okay. And so how does the supervisor-student relationship work? I mean, is it they're working side by side, or the student kind of takes a crack at something and then runs it by them, or it can really vary?
It's all over the map. So
Okay.
It really depends on the type of project. And I will say, post-COVID, it's a different world because we all of a sudden started getting so many remote projects. We really didn't traffic in those a lot before COVID.
I see.
We had a few. But a lot of those relationships are completely Zoom-based.
Okay.
So the student is never actually meeting the attorney in person. And then we have local projects where they may be going into like the Legal Aid Justice Center or Southern Environmental Law Center, wherever they're volunteering, public defender's office, and meeting with the attorney in person. And others will be a mishmash.
Got it. Okay. So this is a great segue to talk about sort of the different types of projects.
Right.
So again, from what I gleaned from our website, which is very thorough, you have the sort of longer term projects, so a semester or year long.
Right.
So talk about how that works. My understanding, you have a weekly time commitment.
Right. So we tell supervisors, and again, as I said, many are repeats. So they're coming back to us year after year. But they have projects that are 3 to 5 hours a weekish in commitment. We don't want more than that because of academic reasons.
Right.
We don't want our students overcommitting. And so supervisors know that they're working in that kind of block. But they function otherwise sort of like a clinic in that the supervisor will take a group, maybe one, but usually a group of students early in the fall or early in the spring semester with that weekly time commitment, get them trained and put on a project, and then they sort of do their weekly work as they would in a clinic with whatever degree of supervision, depending on what the workflow is. And then the students at the end of the year or the end of semester will log their hours and that project will end.
Yeah. So what's an example of like a year-long pro bono project?
So we have one, for example, with it's called the National Council for Incarcerated Women and Girls. She's based in D.C., but they are working on a compassionate release case for an incarcerated female. And so that project started in the fall with the casework and a group of volunteers and has just continued. And actually, that project has enough work that there's also a group of winter break volunteers working on that. But that's kind of how it flows. A long-term sort of bigger case or project like that can generate a workflow kind of consistently throughout the year.
Yeah. I feel like it's worth emphasizing again that, you know, you take criminal law for the first time and you understand sentencing and all of that, sort of. Yeah. But then when you're working with a real human being, a real client, like you said, it's rewarding work, it's meaningful work, but I think it also deepens your understanding of what you're learning.
And you'll see that in a lot of the comments as I refer to the testimonials on our web pages, but also it can be wonderful for our first-year students because often what happens is they're paired with a second or third-year student working in a team setting.
I see.
And so they can kind of get up to speed without feeling completely thrown in and overwhelmed. So some of these year-long projects are great for that reason as well.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, there's what I think we refer to as just ad hoc projects, another Latin phrase.
Yeah, exactly. So those are just random ones. So we do solicitation of projects pretty much at the start of every semester for the winter break and for the spring break. Those are when we actively reach out trying to bring in projects to post on our Good Work system. Ad hoc projects are folks who have generally worked with us in one of those cycles before, and all of a sudden something pops up, and they're like, oh, I could really use a volunteer too. And they just send in their project request form, and it pops up on Good Works. But we didn't actively solicit that. So it could be in the middle of the cycle. It could be coming up, in December because they need somebody in February. It's just sort of all over the map, and it's unpredictable because students will ask, well, when is a new project? Well, I don't know because it kind of just comes in a flow.
It's based on whatever needs are out there, which you have no way of.
And with those, of course, unlike the projects we were talking about before that are a year or semester long with sort of a dedicated 3 to 5 hour commitment weekly, these you typically come in with a chunk, like we need 10 hours or 20 hours between X and X date.
And are those like research-based? What's an example of a shorter-term one?
So one could be coming in from, say, an environmental group that all of a sudden needs to get responses in on a legislative proposal, for example, and they just really have something that needs a turnaround, or a brief is due, and they really need some research to get that filed on time. It happens with clients as well. Like, for example, if there's going to be a class action, we may have a lot of client interviews that need to get done in a short amount of time to build the class.
I see.
It could be, we had a project this semester, it was an incarcerated client. It was a defender's office, and they needed folks to listen to a ton of tape from phone calls from the jail to look for relevant information.
I see.
Which, is very time-consuming, but it sort of needs to be done in a amount of time. So.
Got it. Okay. And then you alluded to this earlier, but there's also student-run projects.
Yes. And so we have two kinds. There's lots of student organizations. And again, folks can actually see the whole list on our web pages. But in terms of public service pro bono, there's the public service ones. That is your great public service, community service work that does not have the legal component and doesn't have an attorney supervisor. So those are great. And we certainly encourage folks to do that. But you can't qualify that as pro bono. And then we do have projects like street law, as I mentioned, domestic violence project, Virginia Law and Prison project, VIPS, which would be our Innocence Project pro bono volunteers, about 75 of those, so really amazing. Wow. And they're run, VIPS is an exception. They actually hire a fellow now because there's so many to actually supervise that project. But the other ones have an attorney or a faculty supervisor. As I mentioned, like Josh is working with our group of street law volunteers. So.
Got it. Okay. So as I think I've probably mentioned on the show before, we have a student activities fair every year at the start of school. Right. And so 1Ls, who might be interested in one of those, like, can talk to those organizations, like, pretty much right away and understand what those are all about. And then talk about the winter break and spring break projects.
So we had almost 200 volunteers out in the field this winter. The numbers are still coming in, but it'll probably be around that number. And so these are projects where students get to take a deep dive. So instead of just a weekly commitment or an ad hoc chunk of hours during the semester when you're competing with your academic concerns and your other obligations. And again, some of those projects are remote, but more and more students are in the field working in person with an organization and an attorney supervisor. Some we solicit and they're posted on Good Works and people just apply for them as a normal project. But many, many others we work with students to find their own, either back in their hometown or somewhere else where they're going to be. And it's wonderful, particularly for first years, because, again, like I was saying, especially if they come straight through or there's this kind of practice area they're not sure about but they want to try out. Great opportunity to do that. And also, some of these, quite frankly, result in summer jobs because folks get immersed and they got a great relationship with the supervising attorney and they just come on as a, summer volunteer. So
well, and some of them are going to like South Africa, like our Balsa trip, right? Just went on
that's
a pro bono
an annual trip. Balsa organizes with the law firm of Norton Rose, and generally they travel somewhere in Africa, often South Africa, but other places, and just take a deep dive into all sorts of international law-related.
Cool.
Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful.
So you might help me figure this out. So I remember I was a 1L, fall of 2005, and Hurricane Katrina had just hit, like at the start of my 1L year. And I seem to recall seeing on a bulletin board, like a physical bulletin board,
day, yes.
that there was an opportunity to go to Mississippi and to Louisiana. I signed up 3 other students who I'd never met before signed up. So the 4 of us rented a van, and we drove over spring break down to Gulfport, Mississippi. We slept in a church basement, and we worked for the Mississippi Center for Justice for that whole week.
Fabulous.
I mean, it was unreal, even 6 months after the storm.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
even now.
Even now.
Yeah.
Even now, 20 years later. But 6 months later, the Gulfport, Biloxi, New Orleans, all the places we went were just leveled.
Oh, yeah. The need for housing was
It was
a crisis of unbelievable dimensions. So
It
even
was.
with FEMA on the ground, I mean.
Well, right. And so we would do intake. People had so many questions about FEMA and how it was going to work and what were their landlords trying to do now, and
Right.
And so I don't think we had anything like the Pro Bono Challenge, which we're going to talk about, or I don't think that those hours counted towards anything. But I think it was just we're going to do this Pro Bono spring break trip.
Oh, no. They counted if you
Did they?
logged them. Yes,
Oh,
the
great.
Pro Bono Challenge, 75 hours, has been a part of the Pro Bono program since its inception back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Basically, 75 hours equals 1 hour per academic week. So it's, it could be 25, 25, 25, which students don't have to do it that way. But it was seen by the faculty committee that I worked with initially as a very reasonable, challenge. Our program is totally voluntary, by the way. Some schools do mandate a certain number of pro bono hours to graduate, but ours is just a challenge, and it's voluntary. One of the incentives, of course, is if you want a public service summer grant, you need to log 40 hours of pro bono before you can apply, or 35 if you have 5 public service hours.
Okay, so now maybe that's jiggling something loose
Ringing
in my
a bell.
brain
Yeah.
because I did get a PILA grant for my 1L summer.
So you probably logged pro bono hours. Yeah.
Got it.
Because that's one of the requirements. And now we also have folks who, and we might talk about this later, but who need hours to apply for admission to the New York State Bar. So.
Right. And we are going to get to that. One other thing I wanted to point out is, we talked about the long-term projects, the ad hoc projects, the student organization-run projects, winter break, spring break. If for some reason you can't find anything in there that you feel connected to, students can also create their own.
Oh, absolutely.
So how does that work?
A lot of them end up doing that with or without our assistance for winter break, because what they see posted that we solicit for whatever reason is not what they want to do or is not where they want to be. And so we have a little process that we outline for them of how to do this. And it basically is a pretty easy email model that we give them with their resume to reach out to potential host organizations on their own. We provide public service alumni contacts if they need them. But usually when they're sending an email like that, especially if they have any personal connection to the organization, 1 or 2 emails and they're going to have a project.
Right.
We've really never had a situation that somebody could get nothing.
Right.
We may have a situation where they didn't get choice A.
Right.
But you're basically offering yourself as a volunteer.
Right.
So
who's going to turn that down? Right. So, for example, if I were going home to Fairfax, Virginia over winter break and there was an organization that I knew of, you all would help me reach out to them and basically say, I'm a UVA law student. I'll be home for this amount of time, and I would love to help out with whatever you need help with.
Basically what the sample email says.
Amazing.
I mean, so it's pretty simple, and it sounds almost too simple, but it works, and it's worked for years.
And that host organization supplies the supervising attorney and all that stuff. Oh,
yes,
great.
because that's one of the requirements. And so, again, if you're going to try to log your hours, there has to be a form submitted by whoever is supervising that has a bar license.
Got it. Wow, that's incredible. Yeah. Are there some projects that exist year after year?
Yes. I mean, for example, the Legal Aid Justice Center. I mean, I was an active board member for many years, and back in the day when I was really struggling to find attorney supervisors, I decided, since we didn't have money as a program to pay for that supervision, I would write some grants. So I basically wrote several successful grants working with the Legal Aid Justice Center that provided funding for their attorneys to supervise our volunteers on their cases. Now, the great thing, but the sort of unfortunate thing, I guess it's a two-edged sword here, is that most of those, except maybe one, all went clinical. It developed our clinical program because they basically operated as pro bono clinical pilots, were very successful and got adopted. And so now they're for credit, which is great. And I love seeing a robust clinical program. But the downside is then we lose those pro bono slots. But, regardless, LAJC has been a long-term player for us. The Rutherford Institute is another one that's been with us forever. The Disability Law Center of Virginia has been with us. The National Council, who I mentioned, has been with us. Forthright Legal, which was started by a former professor here at the law school, which works with low-income immigrants on asylum cases here in Charlottesville. So lots of examples of folks who are back year after year that provide some really great opportunities for our students.
Yeah. So since you mentioned the sort of clinical build out, I had no idea about that. So I agree, double-edged sword completely.
For us.
Yeah. So talk about, if you can, you mentioned this with regards to Innocence Project. So for clinics and externships, you're getting course credit, obviously, towards your JD. But you can also, it sounds like, in doing the same type of work that you're doing for the clinic or the externship, also log pro bono. So how does that work?
Yeah. So that's a question that comes up for us a lot. And so, and just to be clear, the rules are different for the New York State Bar. So anybody who's listening, if you're thinking of the New York Bar, the rules of their program and our program do differ in some ways, particularly around clinics and externships. For our program, we really tried to base it on the model rules and no financial compensation and no credit compensation because then you're not really a volunteer. You're doing it for academic credit.
Got it.
But the New York Bar does allow academic credit granting courses with specific rules to qualify. So it's a little bit different.
Got it. So we've sort of touched on GoodWorks, which is the database.
We love GoodWorks. We built it ourselves.
Oh, wow.
So it totally caters to the needs of our program and our students. It's an in-house system, and it's great. It's where all projects are submitted with a form by the supervisors. Students, they sign in initially, and they have a student volunteer agreement, which gives them some ethical and professional responsibility guidelines that they say they're going to agree to. So they know they're participating in a program where we have expectations. And then from then on, they can browse new projects as they come in. They apply for projects that way. They get assigned to projects. And then as they're assigned, then they have the ability to submit their work logs. And a short evaluation. And then we make sure the hours go out to the supervisor for approval. So all hours are validated by the supervisor. And then they have an account. And so it'll tell them when they've reached the 75 hours. It gives them a breakdown of all their projects.
So you use the word apply. So I really want to know how that system works. Is it a competitive process? Do they rank their choices? What do they have to do to apply?
Yeah, so it can be competitive. It totally depends on the project, the timing of the project, and sometimes it depends on what's hot. Again, it also depends what time of year it is. So there's lots of factors. But basically, the supervisor is going to submit a project. They're going to indicate how many students and the number of hours. Students who are interested will submit a short statement of interest. This is not a cover letter. We're not applying for a job.
Right. Okay.
But, a paragraph, some sentences basically saying why I'm interested, if I have any relevant experience, which is not required, but if you do, it's nice to let them know, and a copy of your resume. I look at those, make sure, particularly for first years, that we're okay and our resume looks good, and then I send them along to the supervisors. Now, there's always an application deadline. Some supervisors will get applications and be like, love that person, done, close out the project. And they don't even get to the deadline. Others will sit and wait till their posted deadline, collect in everything they get, then go through them and make their selections.
Got it. So is the supervisor able to say, I want a 3L?
Yes.
Okay.
So they can indicate course requirements. They can indicate, if they need Spanish, for example, language ability. They can indicate whether they have to be a 2L, 3L, 1L, well, they take LLMs.
Got it.
And, for example, do they need a car? Because some students don't have a car. So can this project be done without access to a car? Can the project be done remotely? So there's sort of a category we call additional requirements, and they can specify.
Okay, great. So what if, not that any of our students would ever do this, but can you talk about just the accountability aspect. What if the student just kind of drops the ball or doesn't follow through?
That's why I'm here. I mean, I always say to my supervisors, I think the one really good thing about our projects is that I'm here, basically full time, and it's my job to run that interference. It doesn't happen very often. We try to really school it into our students, and then we also put on every fall a pro bono professional responsibility and ethics presentation by Amy Walters, who's a staff attorney at the Legal Aid Justice Center, but really emphasizing like you are, not only is there a client involved, but you are also practicing under somebody's bar license. But for the most part, our volunteers are great, and the supervisor evaluations that come back are usually glowing. They want more volunteers from UVA Law. So it doesn't happen a lot, but it is an education process, particularly, again, for first years they haven't taken PR.
And for those who don't know, PR, professional responsibility.
Sorry, yes.
No. But I'm glad you said that because that's a required course before you graduate. But I think it sounds to me like just being a pro bono volunteer, you are getting re-emphasized and reiterated over and over again what your duty is as a lawyer and how heavy that responsibility is.
I think that's one of the great pluses of early exposure to pro bono because, most of our supervisors, for example, are going to screen for conflicts. Most students have not had that experience before. And, again, for the most part, first semester, first years aren't going to have a conflict. But occasionally they do. Maybe a spouse works for the, local police department and they're on a case trying to help with the public defender. So it does happen, but I think it's just a great exposure that, hey, wait, conflicts are really important and here's why. And our good supervisors will, take the time and explain that. And also just the whole duty to your client, I think, gets really emphasized and is, again, a new exposure for somebody coming into law school. Like, wait, I have an ethical and professional responsibility for the welfare of this client. And it shows why we want that supervising attorney piece in there and why you don't give any kind of legal advice when you're not barred and you're not licensed, right?
Right. So we touched on the pro bono challenge. We've mentioned that it's 75 hours and you're logging your hours in Good Works, right?
So first-year students who at the end of their first year have logged 25 hours or more, most have logged more, get recognized. And then same for second years, which would be 50 hours or more. And then the 3Ls have to have logged 75 or more. And again, many have logged way more. So, and then they get recognized in the graduation brochure. And then we have special certificates and gifts for them. And then we have what we call the Pro Bono Award winner. So we give out one award annually to sort of the volunteer extraordinaire, so to speak. And so some of that is number of hours. Like our last year's winner had done over 500 hours.
I saw that. Evan?
Evan. Amazing. And he's going to work for legal services in Norfolk. So, I mean, very committed to indigent client work, as most of them are. And so, but also leadership and commitment to service more broadly. So he was very involved with the program for law and public service and
just like almost a pillar of the public service community is how I think of it. Fun fact, Ryan Faulkner was my class year's winner, and he has recently returned to the law school as the assistant dean for public service after like a 15-year career as a federal prosecutor. And Evan, same thing. I read Evan's bio, the 500 pro bono hours, he's going to legal, in Norfolk. To me, the Pro Bono Award almost portends this illustrious public service career to follow. Do you agree with that?
Often it really does. I mean, these are some of our most committed to access to justice. It certainly doesn't mean you have to be going into public service work. And in some, we have a nice bio of almost everybody. Going back to the beginning. Some did start in private practice, but often very specific private practice that had links back to the public service work or whatever. But often you'll see amazing public service careers starting to build as pro bono volunteers that go on into their professional lives.
So you touched on this, the New York State Bar. We talked about how our students who are performing pro bono are developing their professional skills. But actually the New York State Bar, I think, is the only state?
It is the only state right now, yes.
Okay, that requires pro bono hours in order to be licensed.
Correct.
So can you talk about how that came to be?
It was one of the justices in the New York system who just really felt strongly that the model rule we talked about should really be must as opposed to should.
Got it, yeah.
And there were several other states who definitely had discussions about this, but New York is where it really went forward and was implemented. It's been, I can't even remember how many years now. I would say...
I want to say I was at Columbia Law School, my very beginning at law school admissions career, when this was implemented. So like 10 years ago?
I was going to say, I was thinking it's about a decade old now.
Yeah.
And so, yes, so it's the only one, but obviously New York is a huge bar.
Right.
And
it's impacting a lot of
It impacts
attorneys.
a lot of our students and almost all of our LLM students. So the nice thing is, though, that they have a broader definition, like I was mentioning. So things like clinics serving indigent populations, not business law clinics, but, like a housing clinic or immigration law clinic. Even though you're getting credit, you can count those hours. So they have more of a flexible way to meet some of these requirements. Most everything that students log for our purposes, for the challenge, do qualify for New York, but there's always a few little exceptions. And so we always say we, as a pro bono program, can never verify any particular project does qualify.
Got it.
But the courts has an email and a phone system you can get verification. But the other thing to know is, for example, some of our students change their mind, and they're all of a sudden in their third year, they're going to New York, and they're like, oh, my gosh, I haven't even done any pro bono, and I don't have time, or I'm not going to get 50 hours. But you can take the bar. It's simply at the point where you're going to apply for admission. So you do have a couple months in there where you'll have the opportunity to pick up either all the 50 hours if you have to, or whatever you weren't able to make. It is certainly way easier to do it while you're a student, but, things happen and people don't always have the opportunity.
Well, good for New York. Yeah. I mean, that's the bar I took. That, of course, this was not in place at the time.
Right.
But yeah, you touched on this. I don't know if we've ever talked about this on the podcast, but just for those who aren't aware, you can certainly still take the bar in July. But there's a whole separate process where you need to actually apply for admission to the bar, which involves passing the bar exam.
That's the easy part almost.
That's it. Right. But then there's character and fitness requirements. There's, for New York, this pro bono requirement. But, for me, for example, it was several months when I was working at my firm, but not quite licensed to practice yet, because it just takes time.
Yeah, I think it's nice that there is that leeway. You can sit for the bar, even if you haven't met your 50 hours.
And you have time to do it. Yep. So this is a great segue to talking about firms and private practice. And I have personal experience that I can speak to in a second about being in the private sector, but still having a huge foot in the pro bono.
Oh, we need more of you.
World. Oh my God! Well, you're sweet. So, how do you sort of counsel someone who's maybe not winning the pro bono award,
right?
But somebody who is really dedicated, but for financial reasons or for just professional reasons, they want to go to a firm. How do you help them think through choosing the firm and understanding how pro bono can fit into their practice?
Right. And so I probably say that career services does more of this counseling than I do, because students just tend to be in conversation with them more than they are with me when it comes to making those decisions about public service work versus private firm work. But for example, you would want to look, do they have a pro bono requirement? Most firms do now. There's also a pro bono challenge that's put out by the Pro Bono Institute. And so if the firm is a signatory to that, they're saying that they're going to give at least 3% of their hours to pro bono. So that's just kind of a good marker to check out who's on that list.
Yeah.
Do they have a full-time pro bono director? Is that person an attorney? How many partners are involved versus just associates? Are there pro bono requirements for summer associates? How do the pro bono matters come into the firm, and how are they screened? As in, can you bring in your own matters? Does the firm just work with one organization? Do they have programs where associates can go and, say, work full-time at, Brooklyn Legal Aid on the firm's dime? Lots of things that suggest a culture.
Yeah. So I could not agree more. I have so many thoughts on this. I'm remembering when I was interviewing for a firm, the beginning of my 2L year, I had just, like I said, I had a PILA grant that first summer. I was doing public service. I was very involved in public service. I had done this spring break pro bono trip.
You are.
I mean,
one of our stars.
Thank you. My entire resume was kind of speaking to that. And so the firm was Weil Gottschall, but my interviewer really valued, I think, my experiences. And so because of that, when it came time that I did my callback and I did a second visit, and the firm really emphasized, like, this is a place where you can still maintain, like, all of these interests and things that are important to you from a pro bono perspective. And that is really what made me choose my firm. I ended up, you mentioned this, I did a 4-month externship with legal services in Brooklyn.
Amazing, right?
Yeah. And, but the firm was still paying me as an associate, but I was doing 4 months full-time landlord-tenant work, domestic violence work. And this was not just, the firm is being, altruistic and really
benevolent. Yes.
Right. It's good for business. It's obviously good for the community. A lot of the firms are very invested in sort of, especially the New York communities, but of course.
New York is a huge, onto its own.
Right.
Very, very
right.
pro bono centric.
Well, and I mean, I was in a very small practice group, and practice groups' pro bono hours at the time got pooled. And so to have an associate such as myself who was logging, hundreds of pro bono hours, that was good for our practice group's sort of stature, I guess, in the firm, as long as I was doing my client billable hours, which of course I was. And I would say most importantly, the very first time I argued in court, I think I was a second or third year associate because it was a pro bono matter. It wasn't for Johnson & Johnson or BP Oil.
That'll be when you're at 10 years
when you're well into your partnership, right? So I ended up in court multiple times as, again, a junior associate, obviously with the supervising partner. And those were some of the most rewarding moments of my whole career because they were, in those particular cases, asylum seekers, low-income tenants, things like that. So choosing your firm and making sure that they appreciate that you are more than just going to do private equity or whatever,
right,
that you have these other interests. Mergers, right. I think it's good for you and for them. And never did I appreciate my law firm more than after those 4 months in legal services, just from a resources standpoint.
It's huge. Huge.
Right. Like you are doing literally everything yourself. You have a crumbling building.
You have no secretary.
You have no secretaries. I became a notary public just because I had to do so much for my clients. And connecting with my pro bono clients is what kept me at a big law firm for 7 years.
And it's also a great way, if you think, hey, I'm probably not going to be here forever. I mean, most people don't land at their first firm and end up dying there as a partner, right?
Right.
So you make connections. The public service world is small.
That's such a great point. I would say the legal world in general is smaller than you think.
Yes.
The connections you make and all that matter.
And those connections are good, but also why I always say to everybody, you don't want to burn that bridge because
absolutely.
the word also spreads that way. So, pro bono is serious. You have beta commitment. So.
Yeah. So before I get to my sort of final questions, is there anything about the pro bono program at UVA that we didn't cover that you want to make sure people know?
No, I think this has been a great conversation. And I'm not just tooting my own horn about pro bono. I mean, I think our public service program is basically second to none. It's just amazing when you look over the years and see how many resources we have here. So I just want to put in a plug that I hope everybody will look carefully when they're making their choices at what we have to offer here.
Yes. So last question. Before we go, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your time as a student. If you have like a particular memory or moment that stands out from those 3 years.
Well, I think I really came here not knowing much at all about UVA. And I was just amazed. I came from a small college. I think we had less than 1,200 students. A big class for us was 20. And I was coming to this law school. We were even bigger back in my day in the boom 90s than we are now. And it was just amazing to me how I felt so much more community here than I even did at this small.
Yeah.
And I loved my college. I'm not trying to slam
Carleton's
that.
amazing.
It was just, I just think folks need to come visit and be here because it was like sort of the first second. Like, okay, I'm not just like a peg in this,
Yeah.
giant board. It's like professors know you. Professors are here. Professors are open door. Students collaborate. It was like people are great. People are nice. Students are not trying to stab you in the back. It's like
Sure.
you get sick and somebody's taking notes for you. I mean,
Yeah.
back in the day, we took notes
So
by
that's-
pen.
Yeah. Love what you said about how even though the size of the school
Was big. Bigger than it is now, I think.
Right. Absolutely. And we have gone through those fluctuations in
Right.
class sizes. Like even when I was here, we were 360 a class versus 300. But you talk to anybody, no matter what decade they went here, and the community element doesn't change.
No, when perspectives talk to me, the first thing I say is talk to alums. I mean, I'm
Yes,
one,
yeah.
but just talk
Yeah.
to any alum. I don't think you're going to get an alum. At least I haven't met that person who says anything that was not
Less than
wonderful.
glowing.
I mean,
Totally.
great place to go to law school, fabulous faculty.
They'll probably talk to you about it for more than you wanted
and
to
now it's
hear.
like in this amazing public service program that rivals everyone, So
Yeah.
it's just it's amazing. But yeah, the community thing, particularly since I was pretty nervous coming from a really small
Sure.
school to a school I knew nothing about was huge.
Well, this has been so much fun.
This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming, Kimberly. It's been great. This has been Admissible with me, Dean Natalie Blazer at the University of Virginia School of Law. My guest today was Assistant Dean for Pro Bono and Public Interest, Kimberly Emery. The next episode of Admissible will be out soon. In the meantime, you can follow the show on Instagram at Admissible Podcast. And as a reminder, Admissible is now on YouTube. You can check out all new episodes there, along with some vintage content we're sharing to help guide you through this application season. Thanks so much for listening, and please remember to rate the show wherever you listen to podcasts.